5. We only have 2 more sessions together. I'm feeling a touch heartbroken at the thought of that, but I'm excited that we are at this stage in our journey. And today we're talking about our spiritual self. But before we get into that, we're going to start it off as we always do with a 3-minute breathing, 3-minute-ish breathing exercise. So getting into a comfortable seated position or laying position. Again, being comfortable is the most important part of this. Closing your eyes and tuning in to the magic of your breath. Not changing it in any way, simply allowing it to be. And as your mind wanders, which it will, because remember that blank state is a myth. Bringing your attention back to your breath. That beautiful belly breathing in and out. Bringing your awareness to your toes and feet. Sweeping up through your legs, your hips, your stomach, your low back, your upper back and heart and lungs, shoulders and arms and fingers. Feeling the energy flow as we move quickly up the body to the neck, your jaw, eyes, forehead, and the crown of your head, and the very, very top. I want you to visualize a powerful energy flow. The energy may be light, it may be water, it may be wind, moving in and out the top of your head. As you breathe in, breathing it down, 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 down into your toes. And breathing out, letting it circulate back up and out through the top of your head. Allowing that energy to flow through you, to flow down to your fingertips, to circulate in areas where there may be more pain or discomfort. Spending more time in the places of your body where you feel more. Perhaps this is in a joint or the back. Perhaps it's the neck or the shoulders or the jaw. Give yourself the energy flow to this spot and location. Give yourself what you need. Bringing your awareness back to your breath and gently opening your eyes. I liked that one today. I like the idea of that energy flow coming in and us really identifying and honing in and focusing on the part of our body that needs it the most. Because some days it might be the low back, and some days it might be the shoulder, and some days it might be the elbow, right? Some days it might be a migraine where we need to focus our attention and energy. Some days it might just be general fatigue, and that feeling that energy flow may enliven us in a new way. So, week 5, spiritual self. Woo! Could be a doozy for some people. And so spiritual self isn't necessarily attached to a religious or a faith-based self, but it might be. Depends on who you are, what you believe in, what your background is, who your family is. But spiritual self today, for me, we're going to be talking a little bit about how I define it and how can we reconnect and tune into the spiritual self. And again, you're going to come up with your own definition of what spirituality means and looks like and feels like for you. But to me, it is about openness. It's about shedding the various layers of armor that I have built up over my 33 years on this planet to protect myself, to make sure that I get shit done, to make sure that I function as a mother and as a professional woman, as a wife, as a friend, as a daughter. Okay? I've got armor. We all do. Brené Brown talks a lot about this, about how our armor can really interfere with our ability to be vulnerable. And I think really honing in and tapping into our spirituality requires us to be vulnerable in a really big way. And even sitting in meditation and mindfulness is vulnerable. It's physically vulnerable, it's emotionally vulnerable, and so you've already been doing that work. So if this is feeling like, oh my gosh, now I have to be vulnerable, you've already been doing it. We just haven't been saying the V word. And so I want to talk a little bit about our brain and how it develops as we age, and how that contributes to our armor being built and perhaps the lack of openness that we have as we get older, but how we can reacquaint ourselves with this. Between the ages of 0 and 7, we spend the majority of our time in something called theta wave. And theta wave is a very vulnerable place to be in, but it's a wonderful place to be in for children because that's where the imagination lives. That's why kids find it so easy to sort of see something that isn't there, or to create something, or to pretend eat. It's amazing watching young children move into this space of pretend, where it's often so hard for adults. And the reason it is that as we transition out, from age 7, we move into more alpha, waves, and then slowly over time as our brain evolves, and really it doesn't fully mature until we're 30, right? We like to think that as soon as you turn 18, that you're a completely high-functioning, fully formed adult. You're not, okay? Surprise, surprise. That's why so many millennials, I'm an elder millennial, I'm not trying to rip on them. Millennials are living at home with mom and dad, okay? The brain does take a lot longer to develop, and we now realize that. But as we get older, we still go in alpha, but then we're more in beta and gamma. So these are higher frequency wavelengths. They are associated with more focused thinking. They are associated with specific tasks and problem solving. And while they're absolutely essential for our survival as adults and being high functioning working people, they really stop us from immersing ourselves in the imagination and getting into play. That's why it's harder oftentimes for adults to pretend and make believe with their children. But today's session is really about how do we reacquaint ourselves with this type of brainwave? How do we actually get into theta? And the amazing thing is that we actually can. So we'll come back to that. So today it's really exploring the concept of openness and play, and finding what is play for you as an adult. Where do you lose yourself? Where do you lose a sense of time? Where do you become so fully ensconced that you're no longer thinking about what it is that you're doing, you're just doing it. And it's coming naturally and beautifully. Where a very deep sense of self and intuition comes to light. And this can come through in play as an adult, which may be in the form of a hobby. And so I'll ask you to pause here and to think about, when did you last feel this way? When did you last feel completely absorbed in something that you were doing and it was delicious? I don't mean delicious in perhaps how it tasted, unless you were cooking or baking, okay, because you can become fully absorbed in that. But delicious in the sense of how it left you afterwards. How you allowed yourself to be open and to move into vulnerability and to do something that you love doing. For some, it will be painting. For some, it will be running. For some, it will be playing leapfrog in the backyard or swimming with the kids. For some, it will be gardening. For all of us, we are going to have different places where we feel this deep sense of stillness and calm, peace, quiet, wholeness, and connection. And if this is something that you're realizing, oh my God, I don't know when I last felt this. I don't know if I've ever felt this. Oh my gosh, that's okay. I want to normalize that. I don't want you to be hard on yourself if this isn't something you've felt in a long time or felt ever to your recollection. I truly believe that our playful and creative selves are deeply entwined with our spiritual selves. That when we come to this place of power, we feel a greater sense of connection to ourselves and perhaps to the world around us in a more deeper and meaningful way. And for me, that's the link of why I think exploring playfulness as an adult is so essential for helping us to tune into our feelings of spirituality and our deeper sense of who we are. So perhaps the thought of reconnecting to play or our inner child, which we all still carry with us, is perhaps unnerving for some. We've talked a little bit about old wounds and things that have happened to us in our past life that impact us now in the present. And if the thought of reconnecting with your inner child is scary because you've experienced some form of trauma or upset during that time, I don't want you to move into a place where you feel uncomfortable or scared, but I do believe that we can reacquaint ourselves with that playfulness without perhaps unearthing the trauma that was associated with being a small child. Well, I do think unearthing it is so important and big work. I do think you need to do it alongside someone who can support you medically and professionally throughout that journey. So, connecting to that playful side of ourselves. We've spent a lot of time over the last 5 weeks sitting and doing exercises on a mat or on our bed. But this week, it's about getting up and testing and trying and perhaps doing something that makes us feel really silly and uncomfortable to start with. Perhaps it's reconnecting with an activity we haven't done for a long time. So I want you to think about an activity that you love doing or loved doing as a teenager or as a kid. And I know things might have changed since then. You know, we do kind of grow up and evolve and change over the many decades that we've been on this planet. But I want you to spend a moment to think about what you love doing. And I want you this week to allocate a good chunk of time to doing it. But here's the really important thing. I want you to take a moment before you do the activity to check in on how you're feeling physically, how you're feeling emotionally, how you're feeling psychologically and cognitively. And even if you can at this point, how you're feeling spiritually. And spiritually may be an interplay of all those factors, or it could be something completely different. Again, spirituality is going to be how you define it. It may not completely resonate with what I'm sharing here. And then I want you to do the activity. And I don't want it to just be for 20 minutes. I want it to be a good, serious chunk of time, 2 or 3 hours if you can. Now, if it's running, you may not want to run for 2 or 3 hours. But I want you to give it a good go. And then after you're done, I want you to tune in and answer the same questions that you answered at the beginning. How are you feeling? Has anything changed or shifted? And if you walk away from that and you feel tense and frustrated and pissed off, and it's not because it didn't come back to you as naturally as you wished it would, okay? Because that is frustrating in its own right. But if you're not feeling nourished in some way, then this probably isn't an activity that brings you the same joy that it once did, or perhaps that you thought it would. Maybe you've never tried it before, but you thought, you know what, I'm going to try out synchronized swimming, which is a personal story on my front. Never again. But it's also important to note that sometimes we need to do things a few times over. To get the muscle memory back, perhaps it's playing the piano or singing, to get the muscle memory back so it's not so frustrating anymore. So sometimes we need that practice and we need to give ourselves the compassion and the space to do that and to not completely rule it out. But if after a few sessions you're still feeling an intense amount of dislike or hatred or discomfort, my suggestion would be to maybe explore a different activity. So when you spend time in the activity that you love, what you should feel is that you're no longer really thinking about what you're going to have to do next. Your skill is meeting the demand of the task. And this may, again, as we've talked about, take a few attempts to get to this space. But at a certain point, you feel a fluidity. And this is what researchers call flow state. And here's the amazing magic about flow state. Guess what brainwave you are in when you're in flow? That's right. You're in theta, or predominantly theta wave, which takes us back to the predominant brainwave state that we're in between 0 to 7, when imagination and play is more accessible for us. And so for us as adults, a way to reattune or reacquaint ourselves with this time in our lives is to enter flow state, which is through our own play or hobbies or something that we are highly skilled at. So that is the link between why I referenced childhood, brainwave activity, playfulness, and perhaps attuning to a deeper sense of who we are and our spirituality. As you begin to spend more time in the space, perhaps you'll be able to start gaining more insight to the following questions. Taking out your journal and writing them down, when do you feel most creative? When do you feel most connected to your inner child? When do you feel most nourished? Are these all connected for you? So can you feel creative and connected to your inner child and nourishment through the same activity? And what happens to you when you're in these moments? When you're experiencing flow, what does flow look like and feel like for you? And when you start to hone in on what nourishes you, what inspires you, what brings about creativity, I truly believe, and I'm interested to see if you experience the same, that you will start to reacquaint yourself with your true and wonderful power. And I know some of you might roll your eyes because the thought of being this like powerful, all-knowing, intuitive force is perhaps a little bit too much to take. Totally get it. But when we're able to tap into these things and really come to know ourselves, and that we have created the space to do that, it's pretty amazing what magic we can find lies within us. So I encourage you over the course of the next week to continue to explore this, to find ways in which you can bring play to your life, and to answer the questions that we've talked a little bit about today. And I have just a few more questions to add to the old journal. How can you invite creativity into your life to connect to your inner essence? What can you add if you don't have anything creative in your life right now? How does this create strength in you? And how does this connect you to yourself? The homework for you this week, there's always homework in addition to dedicating some serious time to play and doing something that nourishes and fuels you. We have a guided mountain or lake meditation for you, and I'd love for you to try and do that at least 2 or 3 times this week. The mountain may resonate more for you than the lake, or vice versa. It may also depend on the mood that you're in. So really encourage you to try both out and see what resonates most powerfully. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've only got 1 week left together. You got this. See you next time.